Okay, good morning, everybody. Today we're going to work on lesson 4 and 5. 4 is very, very short, and so is 5, but 5 is critical in building a website from the ground up because this is where we will build the basic framework and add the correct syntax, the HTML syntax to it, so that as we begin to build our style sheet and create the content for our website, that it will be styled and it looks what you see here on the screen. But that's not what it's going to look like by default. I've opened this in lesson 4, and really what it is is a Photoshop file, and that's it. That gives, give the designer an idea of what the finished website is going to look like. And back in the day, before using cascading style sheets to style our web pages, you could build, and you still can today if you wanted to, you could build a website in Photoshop, and then you could slice it up into smaller pieces. And what it would do, what you can still do with that, is it will put it in a table, and that table, the table will be used as the basic framework to structure your page, and you can upload the page. But it really, it's not designed for being responsive. It's kind of clunky, but that was how web pages were built for many, many years, a long time, in fact. Anyway, a couple of things about web design. These days, the format or the basic structure of web pages, I won't say it's universal, but it's pretty consistent. And so let me try to explain to you what the content of a basic web page, the basic structure. You'll notice that the navigation is at the top, and that's pretty much the default these days. The navigation could be contained within, this is called the header of your document. It could be contained within that, or it could be below it. But it's generally at the top, and consistently from page to page, that's where it will exist. In this particular series of lessons that we're doing, it will be at the top, very tip top. And that's not a bad place for it to be. The end user, the viewer on your website can look at a moment's glance and determine where they want to navigate in your website. So that's a good place for it to be, and for it to be separate. The next part down here is called the header. So this is your navigation up here. This would be the header. That's not to be confused with the head of the document in HTML. A header, as well as a nav, or new HTML5 syntax element, or syntax tags that will be used. So the header, in fact, is typically where you have the logo for your website. It could have, it's a basic design element that runs throughout your website and doesn't change. It's like when you look at a magazine or a book, there's that consistency that exists from page to page to page. And hopefully it's something that's attractive, that grabs your viewer's attention, and keeps them there for a fairly good length of time. So that's the next part. Then we have down here, it's up to you. This is all of the main content here, but it's broken down into 3 parts. We have what is called an aside to the left, and we have an aside to the right. That's ASIDE. So we had our nav up here, navigation, header, and to the left we have an aside, and to the right we have an aside, ASIDE. And then in the middle we have our main content. Now, you can have 3 columns like this. You can have 2, you can have 1, you can have more than that. But typically, in most websites, you don't have any more than 3 columns like this. It gets a little bit too difficult to structure, especially if you're building it with to be responsive. So again, we have our left aside, our right aside, and actually what this main section is called in here is called article tag, A-R-T-I-C-K-L-E, article. I think that's right, C-K, we'll find out in a minute. Why is it named that way? How did they come up with a side? How did they come up with that? I don't know. But anyway, then at the bottom of your page, and that's, don't forget that, down here, this is called, this little green bar down here is called the footer. And that also exists on every web page. So to go over this again, your nav bar has your navigation so that you can link from page to page to page. Your header contains usually a logo or a principal image that really determines the overall aesthetic and purpose and function of your website and should reflect, you know, your targeted audience, which is something that we should talk about. Then your main content down here in the article is where the core of your stories or the core of the content of your website exists. The asides to the left and to the right usually offer ancillary information that is relevant to the main content, but it isn't as critical, and that's why it's to the, you know, to the side. You'll notice in this particular example here that we have quotes to the left, and that's, you know, good, like the one down here from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And then to the right, you know, a little bit of extra information about shopping and locations of stuff and things like that. So, you know, they sort of enhance or embellish what's in the main content here. And then at the bottom, the footer, what it usually does, and it's not reflected in this Photoshop image, but it will when we add content later, is generally this is where you have copyright information, if that's important. If you have a person who's in charge of the website, a webmaster, then that person would be here and maybe a link to their email if you need to get in touch. Also, if the content is time sensitive, you might want to put a date where it's, or of when it was last updated. That's important. I know that a number of you, when you're in English and history classes and that sort of thing, do research on the web, and you might use a website as a source for your paper. But you want to know, you know, when was that website last updated? How current is the information? I mean, because you don't know. It could be 1 week old, 1 month old. It could be 10 years old. Who knows? So it's important that you put that, and that's generally found in the footer. So this is what I'm covering right now is basically lesson 4. As I said, this layout was done in Photoshop, but you could just as easily sketch this out on a napkin. Typically, the way websites in general are built is that, or how they're structured, is that it's sort of I won't say an inverted, it follows like a pyramid format in the sense that anytime you load the URL into a browser, it has to go to a single page. And that single page, the file name is always index.html. So you have to decide that's generally your home or splash page. And then all of these links that you see in the navigation here will spread out like the roots of a tree that will link to those pages. Now you could contain within here additional pages that it links to. So that would, you know, be even more detailed and a further structure built within that. But the general rule of thumb has been, or in the past, and I think it still should hold true today, that you should be able to get to anywhere on someone's website within 3 clicks. And that's it. So you're automatically going to go to, when the viewer puts in the URL, it's going to go to the home page. And then within that, you should be able to access anywhere on that person's website or anything that's critical within 3 clicks. Okay. Other considerations that you should make when you're designing your website is that who your target audience is. And generally, when we're styling the web page, you need to decide, what fonts you're going to use, what colors, the same sort of thing that you would take into consideration if you're designing for print. Is this going to have a corporate look? Is it just going to have kind of an edgy, kind of, for lack of a better word, avant-garde look? It really depends on your target audience, and those are the things that you need to take into consideration. For most people who are designing, who are photographers and designers, you really, unless you want to showcase your ability to design websites, it generally has a pretty neutral look so that the focus is on the work and that's it. A lot of the best websites that I've seen for photographers are black and white websites, white background, black type, and then it showcases their photograph. So that's, that's about it on that front right there. The next thing that we need to focus on, and that's going to be, I'm going to start working here in lesson 5, is the basic framework that is used in here. Is that web pages are basically structured in rows and columns. And if we start with the rows, you can see that the nav takes up 1 row, okay? The header takes up 1 row, so we have 2 rows. The asides and the main content take up a 3rd row. It's, typically websites sort of function like a pair of spandex pants. The more content that you put in them, the bigger they get. So the deeper the page is, the more content you have. So that's the 3rd row, and then the footer would be the 4th row. And then the next thing is that each of these rows are now divided into columns. And the nav bar is actually 1 column, that's it. And it has contents within it. What we will be doing to create our the appearance and the functionality of our website in the nav bar here is we will be using Bootstrap navigation inside here. And I'll talk about Bootstrap in a little bit too. Same with the header. Again, it could be multiple columns, but for simplicity, it's a single column, just 1 column. However, when we get to the main content down here, when we get to the sides and your article over here, it's broken down into 3 columns. And then the last one, the footer, is a single column again. So it's a very, it's a rudimentary basic structure, but upon which you can build some fairly robust content. Okay, any questions so far? No? Okay. So to do this lesson, okay, right now I need to make sure that I have, as I said, like when I was working on lesson 3 the other day, I need to go to site and I need to manage my site. Okay, and I already had the one. This is the one that I created in 2018. But what I need to do is I need to double click on it. And this is what you should do every time you're working on a new lesson, is that you need to then, once you've opened up that site and you're managing it, that we need to go to the local root folder. And last time we went to lesson 3. Well, now what I'm doing is I'm going inside the series of Dreamweaver lessons that I have available for you. And I'm selecting the folder lesson 5. There's really nothing in here except the mock HTML that I'm showing you, which really has just a photograph in it, an image, and that's it. And it has some images in here of a fern and a stripe. And it has some resource images here, which is start layout, a JPEG. Okay, but we really don't need it. But I need for this lesson, but I do need to link to lesson 5 in order to build my website. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that as my root folder. And then I twirl down here under advanced settings and under local info, I need to select the default image file. Now for every lesson that we do in the textbook, it has an image folder. And much of the image folders, many of the image folders contain the same content. But you don't want to link to a previous lesson or to a later lesson. You need to make sure that the one that I have here is contained within, see it says it's in the image folder, but I need to make sure that it's inside the lesson 5 image folder. Now, if you've done lesson 3, then it should automatically be linked to lesson 3 from before. So now it's all up to date, and I can save all of that, and I can click close, and I'm good to go. Okay. So now we're ready to build a page from the ground up. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to File, New, like so. And we can look at some different things. We can look, when we start to build our page, we're going to use a new document in HTML, but we will be using Bootstrap here. Okay. So that's what we're going to do in just a couple of minutes. But we have a number of starter templates if you want to look at them. So we have basic layouts, we have Bootstrap templates under starter templates. And you can see in here we have for agency, e-commerce, portfolio, a product, real estate, resume. So just for the heck of it, the book doesn't do that. But let's go ahead and open or create a starter template using Bootstrap. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to open up. No, let me change that. Let me go to responsive here instead. I'm going to go to About page. Let's do that instead as a starter template. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and create. And you can see it has basic placeholders for everything. So if you wanted, to create basically, replace the logo with your own, you could. If you want a circular image, you can, or you can change it, through doing the lessons in the book, you'll be able to customize all of this and determine what's going on in here. If we go ahead and we resize this for a phone, okay, this is a single page, you can see what it's going to look like. So by scrolling here, we can see what's going on, what it's going to look like when it's resized. And if it doesn't resize correctly and is not responsive, then that's not something that we really want to use. Okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll close that. And I'm going to go ahead and file and open a new one. So let's go look at another new one. So instead of responsive starters, let's also look at Bootstrap templates. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look at portfolio to see what that one looks like. That real quick. So this one is clearly a little bit more complicated, but it's broken down into rows, and it's broken within each of those rows. Then it could have a single row or a single column, or it could have multiples. Now the default settings when you're building using a Bootstrap is that it uses for columns 12 units. But if you just specify a row with one column, it will be constructed of 12 units. If you break it down into 3 columns, each of those columns will contain 4 units, but they always add up to 12. That will make more sense a little bit later. Okay. And again, it's all pre-built. And again, when we resize it, you can see that it breaks down And I don't have it responsive here at the moment, but you can see that we have the toggle for the menu. As I open it back up, you can see that our nav bar, here's our home and link. And we have a drop-down menu here and that sort of thing. So, you know, it's already pre-made, but in our lessons, we're going to build them from the ground up. So you get an idea of how these things are structured so that in the future, if you do decide to use a template, and you can download any number of places on the web to get Bootstrap templates, and then you'll have some understanding of how to go into them and use them. But then you can tinker with them and completely reformat them, customize them to suit your own specific needs, rather than go what we're going through every time you build a website to build it from scratch, which is sometimes unnecessary. Okay, let's see if there's one more here, new. I already have, yeah, I don't have any site template. Well, I do have some. These are the different sites, but I don't have any site templates yet. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to build a brand new one here. Okay. So I'm going to use a new document, HTML. I'm going to use Bootstrap. Now, what I want to do is I don't want to use pre-existing here. I want to customize this. But I am going to customize it and I'm not. So I'm creating a new, it's using Bootstrap. I don't have a CSS style sheet yet that I can attach to it, but if I did, I could, which is something that you could do in the future once you've finished our lessons. Now, in Customize, it creates that grid system that I was talking about. And by default, it uses 12 columns, and the gutter between each of the columns is 30 pixels. Now, also, and I'm going to leave these as a default too, so that we have 4 different screen sizes that it's going to accommodate. We have the extra large, which would be a 1200 pixel width. And that really is more the norm today for most people. And then a medium size, 768 pixels. This one would be for an iPad or a touch screen type format. And then the smallest one would be for your iPhone or that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and create. Okay. And it doesn't look like I have much here. I have a, if I click in here, you can see I have a body tag, and that's it. And so this is bare bones, minimum here. And if we look at the code here, you can see it follows everything that we've talked about so far. We have the doc type, which lets you know that we're using HTML5. We have the HTML, it says language, English. That's kind of important these days. That's what we're using. Here's the head, okay, of the document. So that's the opening tag and the closing tag. And notice they've already pre-built a lot of stuff in here. And it shows you where the file is linking. That's kind of important too, so that when we begin to add Bootstrap elements or we create our own style sheets, we'll put it in there. Then after the head, we have the body tag, okay? And then at the end, we have our closing tag. So first thing that we want to do in here, I might go back up here and click. And this is just basic structure that I'm talking about. If I click this, okay, I'm going to switch from to insert, from CSS designer to insert. Make sure that that's selected. And then what I want is I want Bootstrap components. And then what I want to do is I want to add a container. Now a container used to be called an envelope, is that it, or a wrapper, and then it wraps around everything. It contains everything in your website. So the body tag contains everything, and contained within that is another box that contains everything. And that's going to be the container. So if I, double click on it, then I get this little window up here. Whoops, let me do that again. Make sure that I do that. So I want to double click here. Come on. And I'm going to undo that. I want to double click. And it automatically put a container within it, that div. And then within that container, and it shouldn't have done that automatically, there was a little one up here that said nest, and that's what I wanted. So I'm going to go back to my original body tag, and let's click again. And it nested it automatically. It shouldn't do that automatically, but it did. Okay. It should be at the top. There should be that little widget up there that asks you, do you want to put it after the tag, before, or do you want to nest it? We want to nest it. So now what we want to do is we want to add a row to this. And we're going to add a number of rows. So we can come down here. And what I want to do is I want to add a grid row with column. Okay. So I'll click here. And this is where it wants me to put that. And I want this one to be nested within the container. And by default, it asks you, do you want 3 rows? And I don't. I only need 1 row because this is where the nav bar is going to go. So it requires a little bit of pre-planning. And we know in advance that we're going to have 4 rows. The first row is going to be assigned to the nav. The second row is going to be assigned to the header. The third row is going to contain the asides in the article for the main content. And the fourth row is going to be a single row again that will contain the footer. So I'll click that. Okay. Oop, I need to make sure I select nest. There we go. So it's nested in there. It says content goes here. So now with this one selected, don't deselect it. It's just named row. I'm going to go ahead again and I'm going to add another one. And I want this one now to be after. So this is where the header goes. So this will be 1 column again. Okay. Boom. So now I have another one. Now the third one is the one that contains the asides, and it contains the article for the main content. So when I add this content again, okay, I want it to be after, but I'm going to leave the 3. I want 3 columns for that. I click OK. There you go. There's the 3 columns for that. And I'm going to do this one more time for the footer. So I'll go ahead and I'll add this again. And I want it to be after, but I only need 1 column. Boom. There you go. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to start adding, and then we'll be done for today. So we probably get done early. Is that we need to add the proper syntax to all of this. The nav bar, we're going to leave alone. Notice that it says column, large, 12 unit. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to resize this. So this goes down to small. Let's go back up here for a minute and make sure that I have everything in here. So I'm going to go to window. How about, window. I want to, I have the DOM exact, insert. I want to make sure that I have my properties panel at the bottom. I don't have, for some reason at the top, I do not have visible. The hold on here. I should have visible the media queries, and it's not showing up. So where are my media queries? Let me go to media window again. Properties, files, CSS transitions, assets, arrange, toolbars. Let me go up here from standard. Let's see what I have here. I don't want, well, let me see what developer looks like real quick. Nope, I don't want developer because I'm not a coder. I just want the standard. And I don't want that. Let's go back. Okay, well, we'll leave that as is for the moment. So what I want to do now, and I'm just going to bring this down to maybe a smaller format. And you'll notice when I do that, that those three columns go away, but I can, if I look at the dome over to the right, I can begin to select them as needed. So you'll see within the body, and I have, here's the HTML, and here's the head of the document, and then here's the body. This is what I need to focus on. So there's the container. That was the first one that contains, it wraps around everything. And we have our first row. Notice that I can select the row from here. That's where the navigation is going to go. What I want to do is I want to select this one right here, because this is where the nav is going to go. So what I'm going to do here, or I'm sorry, this is where the header is going to go. The first one is where the nav is going to go. So what I need to do is I need to rename in the proper syntax each of these. So let's see what I have here. I have one, let me pull this back out. I may have too many here. There we go. Let's go back out to here and see that. So I have this one selected. So to change the syntax of that div, I'm going to hit Command T. And instead of div class column large 12, remember I said it's always 12 units. I'm going to name this one header. And header is one of the new tags that HTML has, 5 has included as a part of the new syntax for that. So I can name that header, hit the return key. And if I go back to that again, and you'll see at the top of that, notice that that tag has been added. And you'll notice here, it's no longer just a div, but it says header. So now what we need to do for the main content here is a couple of things. We're going to name this one, I think it's, we want it to be main down here. So hold on here 1 second. I want it to be main. Yeah, we got header, and then we have main. Yeah, that's main. Just checking my memory here. So for the main, for the entire row in here, okay, we're going to go ahead here. And I don't want that main, just that column. I want to select the entire row. So I'm using the DOM to do that. That's easier to do that. So if I hit Command T, okay, let me try again. Command T, make sure that this is selected. There we go, Command T. There we go. So instead of div, this is going to be named main, M-A-I-N, and hit the return key. And now you'll notice the entire row is contained main, because that's where the main content goes. But now we need to assign the correct syntax to the asides and the core of our content in the middle. So I'm going to select the left aside from here and pretty much do the same thing. Hit Command T, select that div, hit Command T, there we go. So this one is going to be named aside, A-S-I-D-E. So now that that one's aside, the one in the middle is going to be named article. So again, Command T to bring up the tag editor. And in place of where it says div, that's what I'm doing with all of these, this is going to be named article. There you go. There's no K in there. A-R-T-I-C-L-E. I don't know what I was thinking before. okay, article, and that's the correct syntax. And then we select the last one. And again, Command T. And this one also is aside. ASIDE. Hit the return key a couple of times, and now that one's aside. So now we're just using the proper syntax for the basic structure upon which we can build the rest of our website and add content. And now the last one down here, you have the div selected, and I hit Command T once again. And again, instead of div, this will be named footer. So F-O-O-T-E-R. Hit the return key twice. Now that one is corrected. We've used the proper syntax. And now we can add content for all of these. And what we're going to do on Thursday is we're going to start by building the navigation bar using Bootstrap. So you can see down here in the Bootstrap components, we can come down and scroll down here, and here's, we can have a navigation bar. We can have a different kind. There's, a bunch of different ones. We can click here, basic nav bar, fixed nav bar to top. There's a whole bunch of them that we have options of using. Here's also a navigation with pills and drop down. Okay, navigation with pills and drop down menu. So there's a bunch of built-in navigation formats that we have available to us. And that's it. Now, there's one thing that I did here, that I'm going to do this again because it's not showing in the textbook. It should, and it has for me in the past, just the other day, is that it's not showing at the top here. Even though we're using Bootstrap to do this, we should have our media queries up here, and that's what should be at the top here. So that as this, as this resizes, we can see what size media query we're working from. So I'm going to try this again. I'm going to go to File, New, and I want that. And I don't want to use existing. I want to create a new. Okay, and let's include our own. I don't want to pre-design. Let's go ahead and customize. And let's see what we got here. I'm going to go ahead and create again. And I'm going to come back up. I've got that. So let me go ahead again. Let's go ahead and add my container. And this is what I was looking for before. Notice how that came up before in the upper left-hand corner. I want it to be the container or the wrapper to be nested within that. Make sure that it is nested, and it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add, again, the grid and row column. So I want this too to be a single row because this is where the nav is going to go. And I want it to be nested within the container. There we go. And it's not showing up. Why isn't it? There's something that I've turned off, I guess. There we go. My bad. This is what I wanted you guys to see. So the green that you see here and the purple, these are all used for media queries. So as you resize the page, you can see, as your page changes, depending on how it's being viewed and what size screen, then you'll need to know whether you need to add a media query to reconfigure the page to fit that size, which we will be doing. That will be in lesson 7. And then lesson 8 we'll use that to create what is called a template. Okay, so that's what I'm going for here. So I'm going to take this down to a small size. Let's do that. If I click here, and that should be small. Let's click on this one instead. That's better. There we go. So now I can go ahead again, and that's our div row, and I'm going to go ahead and add another one. So I can go ahead and let's move this over a little bit. Let's move this out a little bit so I can see this a little better. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add another row. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And I want this one, make sure that this is selected. If it's not, then you have problems. So I want it to be after, and I just need one, because the first one was for the nav. The second one will be for the header. There we go. And then I'm going to add another one. I'm just repeating myself here. This one now, after the header, will be the main content. So I want it after. And I do want 3 columns. There we go. One more time. And this one will be for the footer. So again, I want it to be inserted after this last row. And I only need 1 column. There we go. And then once again, we leave the first row alone, because that's where the Bootstrap nav is going to go. We're going to come down here and we're going to select this div. Okay. So this is where the header goes. So I'm going to hit Command T. Again, this doesn't hurt to repeat. So I put in header, H-E-A-D-E-R. The return key a couple of times. And notice now, instead of just a plain div, it has more specificity, that it will, anything assigned when we create a style sheet, when we assign styles to the header, it will be specific to just that region. And that was what we were looking at the other day, that we had 3 different H1 tags, but one was for the header, and we had others that are for the asides, and I can make each of the asides different too. I can create rules that affect both the asides at the same time, or that they're independent of one another. But it's a matter of keeping them all organized and understanding how to assign those rules correctly. So again, I'm going to come down here and we'll select the next div. And I don't want that one. I want the whole row to be selected. There we go. Now I can hit Command T. Let's make sure the div is selected. So I click on that. Whoops, no, come on. Let me go ahead again. So the whole row is selected. And I want to hit Command T. Come on. Why aren't you allowing me to do that? Whole row. Come on. I want whole row selected. Let's go back again. There we go. So I should be able to select. Sometimes it's difficult to get it working the way you want it to. See how that goes away? I didn't want that to happen. It's happening a bunch of times now. It worked fine a minute ago. So now it's not. Let's select again. Deselect. Select again the whole row. And Command T. Why aren't you working here? Let's go to Edit. Or Insert, I should say. Let's go to Edit. Having trouble controlling these screens here too. Edit. And I want to go to Quick Tag Editor, Command T. Not popping up for me. So I don't know why it's not happening. Let me stretch it out a little bit. Let's try that again. Let's go back and select just the entire row here. Try again, Command T. No, it's not letting me do it. Now it's doing it, Command T. There we go. Why it's taken me all this time, these clicks, I don't know, but that is kind of a nuisance with this. So this is going to be main. There we go. Now I can select each one of the asides in the main content. So Command T. And again, instead of div, I'm going to put aside. And then in the main one here, this one is going to be Command T, and I want this one to be article. Hit the return key twice. And then I'm going to have the right one selected, and it's going to be Command T. This will also be an aside. Then one more to go, and then we're done for today. Command T. And this is footer. There we go. So I've done it for a medium size. They say small, so I should have made it smaller to do that. But you can go in and change those as well. But something that you should take note of when you select each one of these rows, you'll see that the column is medium and it says 12. Remember I said default, even though it's a single column, it's set for 12 units. And then if we look at the other one here, you can see that the medium one here, the side is now broken down into 4 units. If I select the entire row though, okay, let's select the whole row. Okay. Can't see, but anyway, when you select individual columns, the aside, you can see that it's medium. This is 4 units. So this one means that these, if I have 2 columns, I can have 4. This could be 8 if I had a single row here, but they all need to add up to 12 units. But right now they're divided equally, and you'll see how in future lessons it will change depending on the size that we're building this. So this is, again, for a medium-sized screen, 4 units. And again, when I click in here, medium-sized screen 4. So 4, 4, and 4 is 12. And then this one too is 12 units. And that's the basic structure for a basic website. And you can see down here, you know, all of the asides and that sort of thing that have been added, all the content that's been added in here. And we haven't added any CSS yet. We've only added the basic HTML structure and the basic HTML syntax for this. Okay. So that's pretty much it for today. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to go File, Save As. And I'm going to save it inside, again, the lesson 5. And I'm going to name it a little bit differently than the book does. That if this was the first page that it were to load in my website, I would name it index.html. If it had another specific name, if it was my home page, if it was my about page, then I would use the naming structure that I've talked about before in naming images. The same one be hold true. But whatever page you use, and you can only have one index.html, whichever one is going to load first in the URL, then it always has a file name of index.html. So I'll go ahead and I'll save that for the next lesson. But the next lesson, we're going to let this go. It's done, and then you're going to link your site to lesson 6. And that's what we're going to do on Thursday. Unless you guys have questions or you want me to review this. I hope I've made myself clear, especially talking about media queries. You can have as many media queries as you want. You generally want to minimize them. But again, what those relate to is that as we begin to add a CSS style sheet, we want to make sure that our page formats correctly for each of the size screens that it will be viewed on. Then we may need to add additional media queries and adjust the structure of the page accordingly. Going instead, for example, from 3 columns down to 2, and then for a small tablet, and then all the way down to a single row for a phone, that sort of thing, a smartphone. Okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. And really, I'm kind of ahead of the game because I was thinking that I would do just lesson 4 today, and then we would do lesson 5 on Thursday, but I've really combined the two today. So we're going to start lesson 6 on Thursday. But you can see as you select each one of these units, and these rows and columns, you can see them highlighted in blue. And then when you click on them in orange, you can change the content in there. You can delete the text or add images or add whatever you want. And then as we do that, we will style it. And the same with the first row here. That's what we'll start with on Thursdays. We're going to start by adding, using the Bootstrap component. We're going to start by adding a nav bar. Okay, and then formatting that and creating our own custom style sheet so that it looks pretty much the way we see it in here, like so. So when we're all done with that on Thursday, and I hope to get the nav bar done, but if we don't, we don't. That's actually fine. We're sort of ahead of the game right now. That it will be styled and it will look like this. But there is a default style that if you feel comfortable with that, you're welcome to keep it. It's just sort of, gray and black, white, and gray, and that's it. Nothing special, sort of generic. Like the initial ones that we had, when I selected new. And I said if I wanted a starter template, if I was going to use, a Bootstrap template, and I don't know, let's open up the product one just to see. It sort of looks like this. You can see that you have your nav bar, which is black background, and it has, gray and white type. And then it has placeholders for the images. And they're nice about it, and that they tell you what size image you need, 1200 by 400 pixels. Everything is measured in pixels. And then, it's broken down. And see here we have another one that's broken down into 2 columns. So each of these would be 6 units each. This is 4 columns. So this would be 3 units each. That all breaks down, adds up to 12 total units. So that is it. Any questions from any of you? No? So are we done for today? Any new people show up? So what I need to do is I need to, if that's it, then we're good. You guys are, if you want, you're welcome to go. And we will continue on Thursday, but we're going to switch now to lesson 6. Add some of the real meat of this. This is, as I said, just the basic framework, the structure, but it's important that it's done correctly so that when you begin to add content that it's held together properly and that you'll be able to style everything correctly using your CSS style sheets. Okie doke. Is that it? Any questions? Oh, question regarding the Wix page. Yeah, can we download the images from the internet, or does it have to be yours? You can download them from the internet. I don't care. Just be careful, because now what you're doing on Wix is you are publishing it. So if you use a published website that it's protected by copyrights, and it is published, you will be infringing on someone's copyrights unless they have licensed it through Creative Commons and allowed you to use and publish and edit their images. Yeah, and I think it will probably work better if you use your own, because you'll have that experience. But at least for starters, yeah, by all means, if you want to use images off the internet, you're welcome to do so. It's more important that you get acclimated to, using this online editing format, because there are other companies that provide services, and one that is really a good one that I can't think of at the moment. Oh, Squarespace. Yeah. You might look at Squarespace, but they charge an arm and a leg for theirs. I think it's like $30, $40 a month. But you know, you can create your website online. It's a website builder, online builder, just like Wix is. But their templates are really, they're much more elegant, you know, beautiful and elegant. They look like they're really, you know, professionally created. So for yourself or for a client, if that's a better way to go than Wix, then go for it, but you're going to have to pay for it. And that's really kind of the direction that a lot of website design, especially for personal websites and small companies, has gone. That it makes no sense to hire someone to do all of this intricate coding and building when you can, you know, build something very efficiently, you know, that's efficient and beautiful online. So yeah, that's about it. You might want to check them out and see if there's other online, you know, site builders. But, you know, check out Squarespace. They really, you know, at least just look at their templates. But you don't have to, you know, subscribe to them. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okie doke. Okay, well, we're done for today. So I'm going to say goodbye and we'll work on lesson 6 on Thursday. And that's going to, it's going to gradually get more complicated. This was an easy peasy one, with the exception of being able to select some of the rows so that I could change the tag, edit the tags, and apply the appropriate HTML5 syntax. But sometimes, you know, sometimes that's one of the hardest parts in here, is doing that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop, say goodbye, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause the recording, and then I'll wait for you guys to log off, and then I'll end the session, unless there's something that you guys wanted to talk about or show me. Okay, so bye again.